All right, welcome back for another episode of Idobi Warped Radio. We are here with the one, the only Andy Black of Black Veil Brides. How are you?
Fantastic. This is my favorite couch. So
that's my favorite couch. That's so weird.
You guys shipped it in for me, so I'm happy to sit on it.
Yeah, it's a comfortable one. And if you fall asleep in an interview, I won't be mad. It's fine.
Okay, that's something else that I'd like to do, was fall asleep pretty quickly in an interview.
Has that ever happened?
Have I ever fallen asleep before?
During an interview.
During an interview. No.
Yeah.
I mean, in the old days, I was mostly pretty drunk all the time. So it's possible, but I would have been blacked out and I don't remember it. A lot of times I'll see footage of myself from like a decade ago where there's no way that there was even like a person in the body. You know what I mean? I do like, oh, this funny thing you said in an interview, and I have to think, well, I wasn't even there. Like it's almost like I can't take credit for it.
Right. It was just like another human behind that body.
Yeah. So I'm not drunk today. I haven't drank in about a decade plus, so I'm ready to not fall asleep.
Big win for me. Sober Andy. I love that for me.
Is this how you were hoping this would start?
I think so. I think it's exactly how I hoped it started with you sober.
Yeah.
Big win, like I said. We're so excited to have you, and I'm so excited to talk about Warped Tour. I mean, it's such a big moment for our scene, and it has been a long time since we've got to go to Warped Tour. So just when you think back to like the early days of going, because I know you've played it a lot and you've attended a lot, like what do you remember most vividly about that time? Like the shows, the vision, the hustle, like what comes to your brain?
It was and is the most... I would say the most important thing to me in my formative years and ultimately for my career. So when I was a kid, I was one of those kids that I would think about how many days until Warped Tour happens again. Because there wasn't really, I grew up in Cincinnati and a lot of shows didn't come there. And so I knew, I think the first one I went to was 2003 and I was 12. And my dad took me and, I wore my AFI shirt and I stood at one stage all day because I just wanted to see AFI. But then I also got to see, I'll never forget that first one. It was three of my favorite bands. It was Dropkick Murphys, Rancid, and AFI all on the same stage. And to experience that was like, sort of like transformative for me. So then it became every year. I can't wait for the day to happen. And then really for my career, a lot of people talk about when they were kids, oh, I want to win a Grammy or I want to be famous or whatever. I sincerely wanted really just to be on the other side of the fence at Warped Tour and to be in a band that was on Warped Tour. Like that was one of my biggest dreams. And, we got to do it early in our career and then we consistently were on it for, 100 years. And I loved every single one of them. And I met my wife. She was an artist on Warped Tour and we fell in love on Warped Tour. And, I've said to Kevin before, that tour is one of the most pivotal things in my life.
Totally. And I couldn't agree more, just even as a fan growing up. I mean, it really was everything. Like when Blink said, I can't wait this summer in the Warped Tour, I just feel like everyone in the scene felt that. And that was the focal point of our summer. And it's so special to have it back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think has changed the most for you? Not just as a performer, but as a person since like your first album or two dropped?
Well, I was really young when we started. I was 16 when we started. So, yeah, I'm obviously in 34. I'm a different person than I was at 16. I mean, there's certainly similarities. I was very kind of singularly minded as a kid of what I wanted to do. And I remain that artistically, but, going to bring it to Warped Tour, I kind of went from being a kid at Warped Tour to then, I'm going to be on Warped Tour within a matter of, a year or two, essentially. So the first Warped Tour that we did, I was a little older than most of the kids that were in the crowd, but not much, And so to see it from that angle, it's also different for me because I think a lot of times people associate Warped Tour with, particularly the 2010s version of Warped Tour is seen as like young people as fans and then the adults in bands, right? Yeah. And that sort of power dynamic is different. Than for me, I was the age of or a few years older than the audience that was coming to see us. And so we were all kind of experiencing it together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I view even myself at that age, starting the band and the dreams and ambitions that I had, kind of part and parcel of that whole experience of like, I have this vision and this idea and I want to speak for and to these people that feel like me. you know, and it was also different from a lot of the other bands that were around at the time, because most of those other bands, and I don't mean this as being rude, but a lot of them were speaking 10 years out from those things that they were talking about, right? Like they're in their mid-20s and talking about like, it's hard to be a kid. And you're like, well, okay, but I actually was a kid.
I'm just a kid.
Yeah.
Totally. I do think that is something Warped Tour is good at too, is like kind of bridging that gap between fan and band and icon. It's like, yeah, like some of these were a bit older, but on the whole, I feel like they were pretty accessible. There was always like a way to meet them or go to the tent or go to a signing. And I think that's like one of the cooler things is there's no like ego involved. It's like everyone's just there for a good time.
That was actually something that really, for me, I ended up, you know, I wrote a book and a few other things. And one of the things that really inspired me to do that was, you know, there were these things called TI classes on Warped Tour for a couple of years. And I did those, and I would sit with our audience in a more kind of one-on-one setting in a fucking hot tent for an hour and a half. But I would speak directly because, you know, the context of meet and greets is a little different because people are very nervous and there's a small amount of time that they have to meet you.
Quick.
Yeah. So, but in those circumstances, I was able to understand where the audience is coming from, maybe the ways in which they relate to our songs or the things that are important to them and the things about myself that I could share. And so that also was really important because that's not something that you get to do at whatever club when you're coming up. You know, it's if you're sitting at the merch table, yeah, you're accessible, but it's loud, it's crazy, whatever. And early on in our career, that became less and less of an opportunity. So Warped Tour kind of presented that chance to be able to connect more directly.
Totally. It is definitely like a singular experience and very special. Yeah. I think my biggest Warped Tour memory was taking a drum lesson from We Are the In Crowd. Was the band I took it with. And I was just like, wow, looking back, I was so stoked that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
It means a lot to fans. Yeah. You were extremely involved in the alt scene growing up before performing at Warped Tour. Like do you feel like you got the chance to attend a lot as a fan?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an every year thing. Yeah. And it shifted because I remember the summer that it shifted where I was no longer just thinking, oh, I'm a fan of all this. I remember the last one that I went to as a fan, I was thinking like, oh, I should be on this now. Like I was getting impatient.
Yeah.
I was probably 15, but I was thinking like, all right, clock's ticking, you know, I got to get this going. And then every time I went after that, I think Juliet and I went, I think one year that we weren't on it, and visited Kevin and a lot of our friends and stuff at I want to say it was at the Ventura date.
Yeah.
But otherwise, every Warped Tour I've been at I was on the other side of the fence, so to speak.
It's so cool that you were like, I want that. It's time. And you did it.
Yeah. I mean, that it's sort of funny. I always say, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but, I'd never had the sort of aspirations of like the ubiquitous fame or all of those kind of things. So for me, I kind of joke that like my main goal for my career was like wrapped up by the time I was like 20. I'd already done that, whatever. But no, it just is so formative to me. It means so much in ways that it's really hard for me to even quantify. Like there's just so many important things that happen, whether it's obviously my wife and my marriage and my life, but friends and other bands and just people that I've known for 15 years, you know.
Definitely. It's like all encompassing. Mm-hmm. Do you have any like, obviously, the wife was a huge, impactful moment. Meeting Juliet, I'm sure, is a standout. Is there any, like, especially crazy or chaotic memories you look back on and you're like, wow, I can't believe that happened?
I'm going to tell you a story that I don't know that I've ever told publicly.
Must be me.
It's going to paint me in a light that is not great.
Okay.
Wait. It won't paint me in a negative light if I give proper context. It might still. I'm not decided.
Give the context.
Look, if I get canceled over this, that's fine. That's all I'm saying.
You can blame me.
Okay, do you know what hot bagging is?
No.
Okay.
I'm scared.
I'm going to just paint a picture for you. You're going to have to stay with me for this whole journey, okay? You wake up on Warped Tour and you have to poop in the mornings, right? There is a mad dash to get to one of 3 porta potties on the grounds of the festival that everyone that's pulled in about the same time in the 30 buses in Bus World are trying to get to those same porta potties. Generally speaking, the amphitheater bathrooms are already spoken for by the stage crew that's loading in. And then where catering is, there would maybe be one bathroom that you would never get to unless you were like some magical, like we could get there amazingly, right? So the choice was try to find the porta potty because the problem is if you wait, porta potties don't flush. There's no plumbing. So at the risk of getting too gross, it sort of grows throughout the day.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
So, and you don't want to be somebody who's in there once a certain amount of time has passed. So you would do the time-honored tradition of what's called hot bagging. So you can imagine what that is by my previous description. We don't need to get into it. Okay. It got to a point where we did one date where our bus door, our driver had parked too close to a fence. So the fence line's here. We couldn't open the bus door all the way.
Got it.
So to hot bag, you have to get out of the bus. You sort of, what's the Petey Pablo song, North Carolina? Come on and raise up, take your shirt off, put it around your head, swing it like a helicopter. Do you remember that song?
I'm going to Google that one after.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Similar to that song, we would take a bag of human excrement, swing it once, and then jet it underneath the bus, and then it just stays there. Now, of course, when the bus leaves, there's just bags of shit, which we once, I believe Kevin was like, you got to stop putting so many bags of shit under the bus.
Was this something you guys did, especially, or everyone?
Oh, this is ubiquitous. I'm sorry to have to spill the story for everybody, but
I'm learning a lot right now.
A lot of people were hot bagging. I don't know. I might have been particularly good at hot bagging, but I can't claim I didn't invent it. Although one time I did learn more from someone like an older band. They're like, "Oh, you got to do this," and I was like, "Oh, cool." So I added some hot bagging skills to my arsenal. Yes. So anyway, so you have to flip it once, and then it goes underneath the bus. Okay. Well, we were in a position where we couldn't open the door enough, and we couldn't even get to the porta potty. So you could really only stand like this to get out. So we were like, okay, hot bag had to happen, and the only way to get rid of it was to throw it over the fence. So we've already played our set. It's mid-afternoon, taking a mid-afternoon hot bag. And I don't realize that fans have seen me walk onto the bus.
Oh, boy.
And I can't see because the door's open beyond that fence line. So the fence and the door is like this. So I can't see anything. So I take part in the time-honored tradition of hot bagging and have no choice but to throw it over the fence line, where I don't realize that there are fans who now have seen Andy go into the bus and now think, oh boy, he's thrown something fun and cool off the bus. This is not something that I know about until I hear screaming. Oh my God. What had happened, you see, is that they ran to get what they thought was maybe like a shirt that I had thrown off the bus. And in fact, they were rifling through a plastic bag of shit.
I'm crying. I'm crying real tears.
Yeah. It was too late. We opened the door. Please stop. They had already run.
This is probably the best interview story I've ever heard.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I could provide that.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Oh man, those fans, they must have been like, what a psychopath.
Yeah, it's hard because you need the context,
you need
right?
Context.
Because I told you everything, so now you get it. But if you saw me,
I actually don't know if I get it still, but
okay, you understand that it was a necessity, yes, and that I wasn't just a crazy person who was throwing bags of poop at my fans.
Right.
Okay.
They didn't have that important context.
Yeah. Now, thankfully, this was in an era before like the much more ubiquitous social media was around, because I fear that this day and age there would be like TikToks made in real time of the poop bag.
That would have been tough.
Yeah.
For you.
Tough for me to recover from that.
Really tough to recover from. Yeah.
But thankfully, I waited 15 years to tell the story myself.
Thankfully, now it can go viral. Now,
yeah.
Are there any newer artists that you are looking forward to seeing at Warped Tour, or that you maybe had on heavy rotation on your playlist lately?
I don't know if they're playing this Warped Tour, but the band that I listen to the most right now, and I know that they've done Warped Tours before, so I don't know if they're, because I don't even know the total list of the bands.
Yeah.
There's a band called Creeper in the UK that is my favorite band right now.
That's a really great band.
Yeah, they're very good. So that's my short answer, is hopefully they're there, because I've seen them on Warped Tour before, so maybe. It's
so funny to see who's like on the tour or who like didn't get the call this year. So I'm just like so interested by it all. But yeah,
well, we're gonna be there.
Yes.
They need somebody to throw bags of poop at people, so.
Someone's got to do the job.
Yeah. At least now they'll be like, oh, that's why we brought them there.
Oh my God. I am on a high alert for bags of poops when I'm walking by your bus.
You should be on high alert for bags of poop anywhere that you go. Okay. Let's be honest.
Okay.
Not saying that it's going to happen to you, but wouldn't it be useful to think, boy, I hope no one ever throws shit in a bag at me?
Yeah. It's really a high hope for me that I never experienced that.
I wish that all the viewers never have a bag of shit thrown at them.
That's so nice.
And I can promise you, and you know what? This is a promise I'm going to make right now.
Okay.
I will never again throw a bag of shit out a window of a bus where someone can get to it.
Huge promise. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. That's a promise.
Oh, man. You are actually so supportive of younger artists in the scene and kind of talk about mental health a lot, too. And I think sometimes that goes hand in hand because I think artists on the rise right now, like you said, it's like they're always under some kind of speculation or things can go viral really easily and maybe get taken out of context.
Sure.
And everything you say is just very immediately public.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really nice last year when you spoke out and you're like, hey, I don't really know this TX2 character, but people are saying a lot of like nasty things, like cool at you guys. What kind of prompted you to make that post?
I don't like, in my position, I've always been somebody who believes in the idea that you have to make things that are meaningful to you. And the opposite of making meaningful things is taking a crap on other people's stuff, right? And to me, I've never seen any validity in spending time. Like, there's things I don't like. I'm a human being, but I've never seen the value in taking time to dump on somebody's art, regardless of how you feel about it. And that has become sort of this unchecked thing that goes on, right? And so when I see a young artist, regardless of who they are, that is getting sort of dunked on by people and that it's cool to make fun of them, I feel a certain level of association there. For a lot of my career, I was someone that it was popular to make fun of. And my band has been very incendiary for a long time and people have varied opinions on who we are and what we make. So I just don't like seeing that. And it's not, to me, I view bullying and that kind of thing less through the prism of how it can affect somebody, because I tend to think of those people are like adversaries or villains in your story, and you should view them as obstacles to get past as opposed to people who affect you. And so I like when an artist, regardless of who they are, is advocating for the positivity amongst their audience. I think sometimes we get bogged down by the idea that celebrating sadness is somehow a virtue. And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to not be happy all the time. But I do think that advocating for the people that listen to you to stand up for themselves in a way that's healthy and beneficial for themselves is the best thing you can do. And everything that I had seen from him was to that means, or to that end. So again, I don't, I listen to the same things I listened to when I was 16. So like, I'm a pretty bad person when it comes to new music. But if I see that kind of stuff, I'm always going to root for the person who's just trying to make something cool.
Yeah, I love that because it truly does take time for an artist to kind of legitimize themselves or like get to that point where they're like, okay, this is on the overarching perspective from fans, this is cool now, because I feel like every band has that like upward slope where they really have to win people over, and it's such a critical time. Yeah,
and sometimes you don't, by the way, and that's okay too. You can be a band that has an audience and does well, and also people dunk on you in the comments. Look, I'm 150 years old, and people in the comments of this video will be like, that band's stupid, this guy sucks. Like, it's just the way that it goes. You don't need to please everybody. And I think sometimes early in people's careers, you're so used to the idea that winning is part of the equation, right? Like, I'm going to do this and then it's all going to work out. And the truth of the matter is life is so much more nuanced, and art is way more nuanced than that. And winning is just making stuff that's sincere and genuine that connects with people. And if you're lucky enough to have 10 people care, or 10,000 or 10 million, that's great. But as long as what you're making is sincere, you can't necessarily win, but you can't lose.
Yeah. And I feel like the more you try to win everyone over, the more you're kind of just losing out on yourself and your art and perspective.
It's not possible.
Yeah. 100%. So I know we kind of mentioned this a bit, but I want to talk about you meeting Juliet on Warped Tour, because we've definitely all heard the story of how you met. But as you're coming back, have you kind of reflected on that with her and been like, wow, I can't believe Warped Tour is coming back, and this moment where we met is here?
Yeah, it's been so much a part of our life. And right now, she's hosting the Prime Video stream for the Washington Warped Tour date, and like it's so much a part of our lives, and it's kind of fun to be, I guess, Kevin says this or that, right? Like, to be back in that place in our lives. And especially for us, when we were first a young couple and in the first years of our relationship, we would go to Kevin's house every weekend for dinner, and it was just, and we've moved to a different state now, and we've kind of not lost touch, but it's just a different time in our life, right? There's different seasons in your life. And so to be able to, I guess, revisit to some degree this season in our life that was so formative and important it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's so special to be able to reflect on. Are you guys going to go together at all? Will she be there?
I think she'll be at the next two because, the third one is, a minute from where we live. So.
Yeah. You guys got to do like a throwback photo against like a new photo.
Yeah.
Like a then and now.
I'll grow my hair out really long and have it be tattered and gross.
That hair, I was looking at that photo you posted for her birthday or something months ago, and I was like, this is so funny to just see the evolution.
That was the day that I first met her parents, which I think the first time that I met her dad, though, was earlier in the day. We had an early in the day set, and I met him full like early black veil makeup. So I guess it's interesting, right? Because in my dating life to that point, there was like, I was sort of not beloved by parents. And not because I was like a troublemaker or anything, but just because I looked like a scarecrow.
Yeah, understandable.
Whereas my in-laws now, they were cool with it right away. So, we have a great relationship. So I guess that probably was it signified that for the next however many years.
They were like, you look like this, but you also treat our daughter well. So
there you go.
We'll let
there you
you
go. Yeah,
this.
There you go. And I guess I was self-aware as well.
Yeah,
I knew that I was dressed like a crazy scarecrow with studded pants on.
What's it like now, years later, coming back to that stage after all these memories, from the monumental moments in your career to meeting your partner? Like, are you excited to be back on that stage? Do you have any surprises planned?
Our someone in our crew was asking me this the other day. She was like, so what are you going to do? Like,
what's going to happen?
Yeah. And I was like, I hadn't considered this. I was like, well, it's Warped Tour. So in my mind, Warped Tour is no production, throw and go, play your songs. So I guess there's an expectation that like, she was like, no, you got to do something nostalgic. So I said, I made the promise to Warped Tour that I'll break my ribs on the other side, because our first Warped Tour that we did several days before we went on tour, I smashed my ribs jumping off a stage. So now my nostalgic act for this year's Warped Tour is I'm going to break all of the same ribs, but on the other side of my body.
Nice. Good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you break them? Did you not fall into people? You just fell?
No, I fell by... So I jumped this way to try to get back onto the stage. I was trying to go feet first from high up, and there was a marble pillar about 10 feet down that I sort of ragdolled this way and then smashed on my ribs and then bounced back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds painful.
Yeah. And then it started a chain of events that was a very confusing couple hours where it ended up me and Jeffree Star in the triage. It was the whole thing. So
Jeffree Star. Yeah. There's nothing more quintessential Warped Tour than good old Jeffree Star.
I didn't know Jeffree at all. So that story is actually funny because my roommate at the time was Matt Good from First to Last. And we were best friends living together, and he knew Jeffree. And I was playing this show, and I guess he needed a ride to the show, and Jeffree gave him a ride. And I believe I had met Jeffree in passing, like we all kind of knew each other in the old Warped Tour days. But so my manager ends up, we're trying to get to the hospital, and there's like a parking issue. It's after the show, and like I'm out of my mind, and Matt goes, I'm going to park the car and then I'll come back in, and drops Jeffree off. Well, then somebody else needs to go park. So the only person in the hospital with me is Jeffree Star. Oh, and to Jeffree's credit, basically was like the boss of the situation, like getting all like, come help my friend,
Okay.
So then weirdly, I think that was like the beginning of our like 3-week long friendship. And then we never talked to him again.
But it was a glorious 3 weeks.
We saw each other. I hosted the APMAs a number of years ago, and I saw him there, and we said hello. And I was like, oh, remember when I broke all my ribs? But that was it. It was very helpful.
They're like, yeah, unforgettable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about some music stuff too. Last year you released a cover of My Friends from Sweeney Todd, which is so cool. And I feel like you have your hand in so many different artistic endeavors. What drew you to that specific song and story, and how did it kind of influence the band's direction during your Bleeders era?
Well, Sweeney Todd was one of the first like formative things for me as a kid, because my dad was really into musical theater, and he went to the College Conservatory of Music and was a theater major. And so it was a big thing in my house. But Sweeney Todd was like the creepy thing, right? Like as a little kid, you look at it, and I was scared of it, but I was also fascinated by it. And they had the original cast recording, and I learned to sing all those songs when I was like 7. So it's just been a part of my life since I was really young. And I always wanted to find a way. I had this dream of like, oh, I want to do a Black Veil Bride style version of My Friends for as long as I can remember. So, I don't know. I don't know necessarily how it all came together beyond the theme of this record that we just finished recording and that Bleeders will be on. It's a lot of stories about kind of revenge and getting back at things, and this idea of ultimately the kind of how futile the idea of revenge is and how hard it is to actually have that moment of like, I got you, but to the chasing of that and how I've kind of always had this chip on my shoulder in my life. And so the story of Bleeders, the story of that song kind of plays into that. So it was also just admittedly an opportunity for me to get to do something I wanted to do since I was 5.
Yeah, that's so cool. I also have always loved Sweeney Todd, so I very much appreciated that.
Good.
You've long spoken about your love of Batman. Can you talk about how that kind of dark world influenced Black Veil Bride storytelling?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've just always been interested in the gothier stuff. I don't know what to say. My favorite superhero is the goth one, right?
Honestly, same.
Yeah, I just, since I was a little kid, I've just always been attracted to that aesthetic. And the story of Batman in particular was impactful to me because it was this person without superpowers, right? And as a loner kid who didn't have any friends but wanted to be this other thing, I connected with the idea of making yourself into what you want to be, right? Instead of, oh, the guy was struck by lightning and then I always viewed that as like, to this day, that band that puts out their first record and everybody loves it and they just strike gold right away. And then everything they do forever is just like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
I never related to that. I was the person who was like, oh, if I'm going to do it, I got to be Batman. I have to make myself into this thing. And so it was just always something that continuously throughout my life has been a source of inspiration and, just something that I love. I love reading comic books and drawing pictures. If I am absent-mindedly drawing, I'm drawing Batman. It's a constant thing in my life.
That's amazing. I have multiple bat tattoos. They're not Batman tattoos, but I think I just really have always had an affinity for bats.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I feel like the Bleeders EP had a very cinematic vibe to me. Was that a bridge to something bigger, or is it kind of like a standalone moment for the band?
Well, so there's definitely parts of it that are signifiers of where the record ultimately went. But I would say that to dispel any thoughts that people would have that this is like a Sweeney Todd themed record, it's vignette stories on the record that kind of feel in that same world. So it's certainly, there's a huge level of theatricality inherently within the album, but it's more about individualized stories or reference points that are about that kind of idea of revenge and getting back at things.
Totally. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And like I said, you really do have your hand in so many different artistic endeavors, including your wife's project a little bit. You helped out on Popsicle, and I was just wondering, what was that like to be able to work with her in a creative aspect as well, in addition to having your home life together?
Well, we've been working together creatively on just about everything since, 2011 when we started dating. I think it's funny because people don't necessarily realize every record that I've ever made since we got together, she's obviously the first person that I show things to, but we bounce stuff off each other constantly, and I think that it's been the greatest thing creatively for both of us, and we say it all the time, to have a person that we so inherently understand each other, and we know artistically the things that we're each interested in and the things that make us excited, and to be able to work to enhance those things. Like, I know maybe there's a way that I don't have this particular skill set or this way of singing or this idea, but she might. Or inversely, she goes, hey, I have this idea that I think would be better for you. And we kind of talk through stuff like that all the time. So to now be able to do it in a much more organic way where we're working together on the behind the scenes stuff and the artwork. And, I'm learning to do makeup, prosthetic makeup for the videos, and myself and Josh, our friend, are shooting these videos and stuff. It's kind of the natural evolution of things.
That's amazing. Prosthetic makeup impresses me so much. I can do a winged liner. It's taken me many years to master, but prosthetic makeup is just so impressive.
Well, it was the next frontier for me, right? Because I've been doing graphic makeup for many, many years. So I was like, I got to figure out how to do liquid latex makeup. And so I actually feel like I did a good job. I don't know that I'll
100%.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. I don't know that I'll be. I think it was actually kind of funny because I did that, and then we had a friend that was like, hey, would you be interested in doing it for blah, blah, blah? And I was like, no, I'm only working in this one capacity.
You're like, it can't be my whole thing.
Yeah, this is just for a personal experience.
Yeah. There's this quote I love that says, being in love with the right person will change the way you see the world. Do you feel like falling in love with your wife changed the way you see and create art?
I think our whole story does. You know, we met at a time when we were both kind of a little bit of pieces of shit. You know, we were...
The honesty.
Yeah, we were in our crazy rock and roll, drinking way too much, you know, wild days. And we lived through that. And we were great to each other and mean to each other and awesome to each other and crazy and all of these things. And, you know, I can take a lot of responsibility in that. I didn't really know who the hell I was when we started dating. And so much of my growth comes from wanting to find out who I was and wanting to be a better person for my partner. And, you know, she's inspired me in so many ways in that regard. But the thing about it for us was, you know, we got sober at the same time. We did so many like really important things together that I don't really know how I would be now if it weren't for that. And I don't really view it at this point, because we've been together so long and we're so intrinsic to each other's lives. I don't necessarily see it as anything other than this is the road that my life took, and it's the only one that it was ever going to take. You know, it's very, I think sometimes people look at their relationship as a facet of who they are, and then they have their life, and then there's their relationship, and they kind of keep those things as separate roads. And I guess I can understand to some degree when you're an artist that may be beneficial, but it was never the case for us, because we were fucked up and crazy, and then we were fixing that together, and then we were the people that we are now. And every major event that's occurred in our lives is so intrinsically linked that it's hard to see life as anything but the road that we take together, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. It's a really beautiful way to put it. Do you feel like you guys, do you feel like the art leveled up when you guys got sober?
100%. Yeah. I mean, the worst record that for me that I ever did was our fourth record is essentially just like nonsense words. Now the record is pretty decent, but like the lyrics, I have no idea what I was trying to say in a lot of them. And I've said that before, like fans of the band know that. But the truth of the matter is that was kind of my rock bottom. And the next thing that I made after that was my first solo record, which has been, you know, by a lot of fans considered one of the better things that I've done. So I think the proof is in the pudding of like when I am not a piece of crap at the bottom of a bottle, the difference in terms of what the output is. I don't think that, you know, I'm also not somebody that has illusions about how people view things. Like for a certain type of fan, the first couple records and the chaos and the things that you can't possibly replicate because you're young and you're crazy and you want it. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, everything I make now is better than that, because it's not possible to recreate that magic to that degree. But I do think that I'm more thoughtful as a writer, and I put a lot more effort and thought into things in a way that maybe I didn't for a time. There's like a line of demarcation where it was like, I was balancing it just right. And then it went too far and it kind of got crappy. And then I've been able to, in my mind, bring it back up. Makes
complete sense. I feel you. When I kicked my partying days to the curb, I also got a lot more clear.
Yeah.
So good for us.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about what's next for you guys. You teased that the band is working on new material. Can you share where you're at in that creative process?
Yeah, we finished a new record. It's at this point, one song is fully mixed. So it's very early.
Oh.
But we produced the record ourselves. Myself and Jake were kind of at the helm in that. Yeah. And it was the first time doing a self-produced record in that way, at least of original material. We had done like re-records or things before, but this was the first time that we, you know, it was also devoid of many outside voices. Yeah. For a lot of years, you get to a place where you start your first record, you write the record together, and then you record it, and then it's out there, right? And then you have a level of popularity if you're lucky, and then people go, you know what, we should put you with this producer, and then that producer has a way of doing things, and then you work with the next producer and they have a way of doing things, and then the more and more you work with different people, the more injection of their style becomes a part of what you do. Mm-hmm. And that's actually been really beneficial for us, because working with John Feldman for so many years really created for me vocally how I am now, right? My voice, there's a definite line where you go, oh, this person became a much better singer. And I credit that all to Feldy and basically him teaching me how to use my own voice. Working with Eric Ron, working with Bob Rock, that we've had a lot of luck with our producers.
Yeah.
But we had never in our whole career, back since the very beginning, had an opportunity to go, we kind of know what this band is. And what would a record be like if we made it and tried to use our best judgment? Like, we didn't want to go in there just celebrating ourselves. I think sometimes that's the thing that happens when bands produce their own record. They're like, everything we do is great. We were very hard on ourselves to make sure that it was the best thing that we could do. And I'm really excited about how it's turning out.
Yeah, same. I'm excited to hear it. I think it's so cool. You can like take those experiences of working with Feldy or Eric Ron and then kind of bring your own magic to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know how any of this stuff functions without particularly those two.
Yeah.
And Jake and I have always said, like, we learned how to be people in a studio from John Feldman. And then that carried over to where when we started working with Eric, who also had worked with Feldman as an engineer in his early career.
Yes, he did.
We all kind of had that, we come from that same school. And so I think in a lot of ways we brought that same sort of means of production to our record. It's just that we were doing it on our own. But it really comes from that for us.
Yeah. Just in terms of being in the studio and like laying down tracks, do you feel like it was more challenging or easier to self-produce?
I would say it was a little bit more challenging in the capacity that you got to make sure that you get it right. I would say the easier thing is for me vocally, sometimes, and I guess this will be determined by how people hear it, but sometimes when you're singing, if you're working with a producer who is also a singer, they have a way that they want to hear something. So if I go, this melody goes this way, and they go, oh, this melody should go this way. And then you're like, oh, and that's unnatural, right? I always say, like, there's certain times when I can hear on records where I would have wanted it to be pushed this certain way, and then somebody else wanted it to go this other way, and then I just end up sounding like I don't know what I'm saying in the song.
Yeah.
With this, it's just the way I want it, for better or for worse, so we'll find out whether that was the right way or not.
Totally. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You gotta guess and check sometimes.
We'll find out. You see if people like it.
How has the sound of Black Veil Brides kind of evolved with this new era, and are you pulling from any unexpected influences?
Well, I think we have a total lack of interest in any commercial crossover, and I think that is...
The truth comes out.
Well, we've been in the major label system for most of our career, where even though we were a band with like a lot of shreddy guitars and I'm writing about like theological ideas, that they're like, but where's the single? And so you'd always kind of have to temper that with... We got to make sure that there's a single. And what we have found, and thankfully, working with Spine Farm now, Bleeders was not a song that was made to be a hit, right? And yet it was a song that, because the label believed in it, did really well at radio and traditional places. So we want to be able to make songs that are enjoyable and that people at radio want to play. We sincerely want that. But we are not in a position now where we're going to the studio going like, okay, but we got to make sure that we have the song that it's cool for the executives kind of thing, which is kind of something that we had been bogged down by for a lot of years.
Totally. I mean, it's such a double-edged sword because it's like, of course you would want that. But when you're trying to get that product and you're getting pressured to have that product, it's like just so organic. And sometimes it's harder than ever to deliver that.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In some cases... you make a concept record that's an hour and a half long and, but you happen to have a song that is a platinum single on it. People are like, all right, fine, you can do weird stuff.
Yeah.
If you do that same thing and then you don't have that platinum single. Yeah. So we've seen both sides of that. So at this point, I feel like the best bet is just to make the coolest thing we can make as opposed to trying to go, but I hope we've got that big hit on there because you can't prescribe those things.
100%. And you guys have built a legacy now where you have room to do that, thankfully.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hear you guys are hitting the road with Baby Metal, and
we are.
I'm so excited for that. I saw Baby Metal last year, and it was magic, and it's such a special experience. What's that going to be like for you guys?
I have no expectations of this. I know so little about that artist other than I think it's a cool looking theatrical show, but I am learning everything on the fly.
We're gonna learn.
The tour, we got the offer for the tour, and we were doing Warped Tour and these other shows, and we've got festivals, and I was like, well, sounds cool. Let's do it. You know, I really love when we can do tours that are outside the box that maybe the fans wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
And I'm fully prepared for the baby metal fans to not love us, and that's okay. I'm going to try my best.
I feel like they will love you guys.
Well, I'm not saying it in advance, like, hey, come hate us. I'm just saying I'm more interested in the whole experience. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole baby metal production is such a cool show. I've seen videos, I've seen a lot of stuff, so I'm looking forward to also being able to catch that.
Totally. And I feel like you guys will probably catch kind of a new wave of fans who might not have seen you guys before.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Speaking of, Black Veil Brides has always had such a dedicated fan base. What's something you learned about your fans recently that's kind of surprised you in a way?
Surprised me. I think that we have such a varied cross-section of people that listen to the band. You know, we've always said, like, from the beginning, it was like 6 to 60. You know, there's like young people who, you know, and literally in the early days, the joke was that they were that young. Now it's literally the case because people that were 14 when they first listened to us now are adults that are bringing their kids to the show. And then the other side of it is you have people that are like old school hair metal fans. You've got people that are really into like the more horror punk elements. Like we have a pretty wide selection of people in terms of stylistical interests. And so there's almost nothing that could surprise me, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I would be surprised. I would be surprised if someone that listened to us would like absolutely hated theatrical rock music or something. You know what I mean? But I think it's such a wide cross section that it's hard to kind of be surprised.
That's so endearing that there's 60-year-old fans of the
We do. We have a lot. And they always comment on, oh, I'm probably your oldest fan. And I go like, well, let's just look behind you. There's all kinds there's all kinds of people. And you know, it is true. I think that we have a very interesting thing where the messaging appeals to people at a lot of different facets of their life, you know, and whether you're in an older phase in your life and you're looking at your life through the prism of, I want to find the bravery to do something I've always wanted to do. Or if you're really young and you're dealing with, I want people to believe in me, or I want, you know, these are ideas that are pretty universal. And I think that they appeal on a level that it does sometimes affect people at different phases in their life. So I'm just happy to know that the lyrics that I write have that level of impact for that many people.
Absolutely. If Black Veil Brides were to suddenly hang up everything tomorrow, what's the one thing you'd be most grateful for?
That I got to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I sincerely, I think sometimes it can be hard for people to remember or have the perspective that we only get to do this because people have decided that we're allowed to. And I don't mean executives and industry and all of that, because yes, to some degree that there's an element of that. But I mean, sincerely, the way that those people even find you is because someone said, yeah, I like this. And then they brought someone else to the table, and then they brought 10 more people, and on and on and on. And we're really a band that has been fan driven since the beginning. You know, we couldn't get shows in the early days, so we would play in parking lots and people would show up. We couldn't get on the radio in early days, so fans would call and annoy the stations and request it. Like, we are a 100% fan driven band in that way. And they've made this happen for us in ways that, and again, it's not knocking people, but there's a lot of bands that right away the critics like them, or right away the labels push them. We were never critical darlings, and it took us a long time for labels to really get behind us. So if we didn't have that audience, we would really have nothing. So at the end of the day, the thing that I am the most thankful for is that I've been given the opportunity to do this, and I hope I get to continue to do it. But if everybody decides tomorrow that we're all done with Black Veil Brides, it was a pleasure to get to do it.
That's amazing. I have a feeling that won't happen, but...
I mean, you never know. You never know.
I don't think they're giving up on you anytime soon. That's all the questions I had for you.
Excellent.
But I just want to say I'm so excited to see you guys live at Warped Tour, and I'm counting down the days.
Excellent. We'll be there. I didn't fall asleep either, by the way.
I'm so proud of you for that. Yeah. And I had a coffee before I came in, so I also didn't fall asleep, which I'm also proud of. And I hope you're proud of me.
Well, no, I am. But I'm always proud of everyone that interviews me. At the end, I like to say, I'm so proud of you.
Is that true?
No, because now I'm realizing that sounds incredibly egotistical, that I'm so proud of you that you've interviewed me. I'm so proud of you.
Idobi Warped Radio.